Fun with failure.
From a creepy teacher to a gun-toting mama, I've got 10 funny stories that I'd like to read for you today, so sit back and here we go. Okay, so I was in a terrible mood one night, and my buddy wanted some company for a midnight run to Walmart because we were working odd hours. Anyway, I started complaining and griping at every little thing I see. My buddy Mike warned me, "Dude, shut up, or I'm going to embarrass the crap out of you." Well, I stopped complaining for a while, but I started back up after a little bit later. So this is what he did. He took a running start while pushing a shopping cart, then jumped up on the back of it near the handle. He puts his arms out like DiCaprio in Titanic, and does his best mentally handicapped billow at full volume, going down the end cap aisle in groceries. I, not thinking, started running after him and yelling, "Dang it, shut up, you retard!" Right as I said it, I made eye contact with a mid-30-something soccer mom-looking woman I'll never forget. She was carrying a loaf of beef stock rye bread. The changes that went across her facial expressions went sort of like this. "Aw, look, that disabled man is so happy. God, he's so loud, but he doesn't realize it. I just feel so embarrassed for him. What, did he just yell at him? I will kill you by beating you to death with this loaf of bread if you even look like you're going to say anything else. I have never been punked so hard in my life." One day in college, the teacher had stapled answers on the back of every test by mistake. A few minutes after passing the test around, his phone rang and he stepped out. Everyone had noticed the answer sheet, and we decided to use it and tear it off afterwards. Hopefully he would never notice. So I checked all the answers, and they were all correct except for the last one. We were to draw a flowchart for a process. I checked the answer sheet and it said, "Answers may vary." I drew a flowchart, tore off the answer sheet, and walked to the front podium to turn it in. When I got to the podium, I had to know. I needed to see what everyone else had drawn for the flowchart. Answers may vary. Everyone had written that on their test. I don't remember what the teacher did about it. Our teacher was giving out recently graded coursework that we worked for in teams. We've all been pretty civil about it, and even shared the essay portions with others that helped out. I will call myself Josh and my friend John. Well, John was lazy. He didn't do any of the work. He just copied off of my paper without my knowledge. This is what followed. John: "Sir, why did you give me a U?" For those who don't know, a U is equivalent to an F in US. The teacher said, "Because you plagiarized from Josh's paper." Me: "What?" Snatches the coursework out of my friend's hand. "You a-hole!" Then John says, "But why do you think it was me? It could have been Josh copying off of me." The teacher says, "Because the part you plagiarized is Josh's first draft, while it only appears in your complete essay. Needless to say, we're not friends anymore, and karma is a cruel mistress." I had a friend whose roommate had a large German Shepherd dog. One day when she came home from work, she found him playing with the next door neighbor's kid's pet bunny, which is now dead. She panicked and gave the bunny a bath, blow-dried it, and placed it back in its cage, afraid to tell the neighbors that her dog killed it. A couple of hours later, they hear the neighbor's kid screaming hysterically. It turns out that the bunny had died, and they had buried it. Her dog had dug it up and played with it. A friend of my father-in-law is a bona fide fracking lunatic. Some guys had played a practical joke on him a few months back, and he has been waiting to get revenge. They live on the central coast of New South Wales in Australia, so there's a lot of water that separates the towns. People use boats to get around. Some of the guys who'd pulled the prank on him called around to see him and hang out. He'd recently bought a new place, so they said, "Why don't we drive around and have a look?" He said he'd be around shortly and they could have a few beers and chill out there. Just before they left, He said that his mother was there, but she was old, but if they called inside it would probably frighten her, and just to hang outside until he got there. As soon as the guys drove off, he hopped into his boat and tore across the water to his place, as it was quicker than driving. He got to his place, threw on a dress, a wig, some old boots, and grabbed his rifle. He hid in his house and waited for his friends to arrive. They arrive and are looking around the property. Then suddenly he burst out of the house screaming like an old woman. The guys are about to try to calm her down when he cocks his rifles and shoots above their heads. They only realized that it was him when they stopped screaming their heads off long enough to notice that the mother had literally kneeled over laughing that they had all pretty much crapped their pants. 2 of the guys had already bolted and were gone. He said it took them about an hour to get over the fright. Needless to say, they never pulled a practical joke on him again. Before I get started, you need to know 2 things. 1. There is a town called Temple in Texas. And 2. I have a very Jewish surname, but I was raised Catholic. I don't know much about Judaism at all, and rarely even consider the fact that most people assume that I'm Jewish when they meet me. Now the story. My wife and I were at a party in Houston, and mentioned to someone that we just moved to Austin. One of the questions that we were asked was, "Have you been to Temple yet?" They meant, of course, a synagogue. My response was, "We drove through one time, but we didn't stop." On another occasion, I happened to be walking out of work at the same time as my boss's boss. He asked me, "Are you doing anything for Yom Kippur?" My answer was, "No, but tell him to give me a call, and I'll do whatever I can to help him out." This happened in my junior year of high school on my first day of class. The teacher walks in. It's an older, wrinkly guy with a mustache that looks kind of weird. His shirt is only tucked in on one side, and everyone's getting this weird vibe from this guy. Like he's not all there in the head, and he's got this manic look in his eyes, and he's creepy. He starts going through the attendance, not looking up the whole time. Then he gets to my name, starts to say it, then stops. He looks up, scans the room, then looks directly at me. "Ah, Mr. Bailey, I'm glad to see you're here. How's your family? Is your little sister still playing piano? Is that model ship still in your dresser? Is your room still blue?" I'm shocked and mortified. I can't find the words to respond. This creeper has just described my family and the fracking room that I sleep in at night. "Ah, of course it is. It's only been, a week?" Then he goes back to attendance. Panics were had that day. But anyway, the next day I find out that that old crazy guy is my uncle's best friend. And they and my dad decided to pull a prank on me since he was my teacher. He wasn't so crazy looking the rest of the year. He shaved off that bad looking mustache, which he grew specifically to prank me apparently. He dressed better, stopped making his eye twitch, etc. I have to admit, it was a good prank, even if I was terrified of being murdered for a day or 2. When I was in Thailand, I got a bad case of the runny bottom. I was on the toilet for ages, and each time I thought it was over, another blast of caramel milkshake would explode out of my hole. My mate was also feeling rather sick. He needed to puke. He had been waiting for me to finish in the bathroom. He already had options. He could have used the waste bin or out of the window into the garden. But no, he decided to burst into the bathroom. I'm not very happy because I'm sitting there naked with liquid poo dripping off of my hole. I started yelling at him to frack off. He has already started puking and has his hand over his mouth with a pit of puke running down his arm. Again, he is confronted with 3 options. Option 1, puke in the sink. Option 2, puke in the shower. Or option 3, puke on the naked fat man sitting on the toilet. He goes for option 3. He removed his hand from his mouth and projectile vomited in the general direction of the toilet. I am not very happy at all about the situation. I start screaming at him to frack off and to get out of the bathroom. This wakes up our other mate, who decided to enter the bathroom to find out what all the commotion was about. He walks in yelling at us about waking him up, spots me covered in puke, starts laughing uncontrollably, and slips and lands in a puddle of puke. I had a flock of chickens, and something kept getting at them during the night. It would only take one bird, no remains, so I assumed it was a fox. My family went on vacation, so I decided to stay up in the barn for the night to see if I can catch what was getting them. That night every chicken roosted for the evening in the bushes around the house. It was as if they knew I was going to catch the thing, so they helped me out by letting me sleep in the house. I laid on the porch in my sleeping bag with my old lady blue plaid nightgown on, and a mag light in my hand. About 1 a.m., I heard a squawking sound. I jumped up with a flashlight, ran outside to see something smallish with a hen in his mouth. It runs to the tree line and I follow it, cursing the whole way. It drops the hen, which is dead, and as I point the flashlight into the trees, I see that it is a youngish raccoon. I pick up the chicken and start shaking it at the raccoon, still cursing. I then think, I'm going to shoot this piece of crap right here and now. So I ran back to the house, still holding the chicken and the flashlight, and looked for a gun. The only thing that I could find loaded is a semi-automatic paintball gun. I set the chicken on the counter, grabbed the gun, and run back outside. After finding the raccoon with the flashlight, still sitting up in the tree, I dropped the light and opened fire, splattering the whole tree, raccoon and all, with hot pink paintballs. At the same time, I'm screaming, "Take that, you mother That'll teach you to eat my chickens." Mind you, it's 1 a.m. in the morning, and I have neighbors. With my rage finally sated, I put down the gun and pick up the flashlight. All I can see of the trees are pink branches, no raccoon in sight. I get a rocking chair, sit it out in the driveway, and sit down to watch. At some point, one of the hens started slipping on the trash can lid she was perched on, so I pick her up and put her on my lap. I stayed that way, sitting in the rocking chair, in my blue plaid nightgown, sitting in the driveway with a paintball gun, mag light, and a hen on my lap, for the rest of the night. That little fracker never came back. Just after my husband and I started dating, we were at my house watching a movie. I didn't have a couch, so we were sitting on the floor. About halfway through, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that he was shifting subtly. He was obviously uncomfortable, and equally obviously not wanting to be noticed. After being offered a cushion to sit on, he says, "No, nothing's wrong, I'm fine." It struck me as so ridiculous that he would just sit there uncomfortable that I got a little tickled. Not giving it much thought, I reached over and patted him, or whacked him, on the thigh about 4 or 5 times, saying, "Well, that's okay then." The thing was, his leg was asleep, and now it was waking up. So now he had full-on pins and needles. He laughed, screamed, and farted all at the same time. It was glorious, and I was wailing with laughter. So now I tell people that he knew I was evil when we got married. Unfortunately, I did break the passing gas in front of her barrier, which was never to return. It was so worth it though.